Want me to do it? You got it.
Got it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Divine Soul Awakenings. Today, our topic is we're going to talk about spiritual traps and labels, how to identify them, and to recognize how they may be impacting you and your experience. I know for myself, especially as we're really going through a huge shift in consciousness, awareness, and the energy uplifting for all of us, we can get kind of sucked into different paths, different avenues of knowledge and awareness. For myself, when I was on the beginning of my journey, I was seeking information anywhere I could find it. And through that process, I was also not allowing myself to really sit in what I was going through. And I would take all that information I was gathering and try to define my life around that energy. While it was really good at the beginning, I started to notice much later on in my growth that all of that stuff, all that information, everything I was seeking outside of myself was actually the barrier that was holding me back to stepping into my potential. And we will expand much deeper into those different topics and different ideas as we go on through the talk here. We will be having our other hosts will be joining us shortly. Is there anything you would like to share about this topic here, Khan, before we really get going? Oh, you're on mute.
Thanks. There we go. I never really thought about being boxed in by these labels, but it wasn't until I was actively in the spiritual community and started hearing about all these, here's this portal, here's that gate, here's this twin flame, this and that. And, I didn't never even really thought about it before. But as I started listening to it, I saw people were getting their backups and they're getting their energy ups even before it was happening. And then immediately they were saying, I'm feeling all these symptoms because it was defined for them. And because they had that definition already, it was like being pigeonholed. So it made me look at myself. Am I doing the same thing? And I noticed I could get caught up in that as well. I could get pigeonholed into whatever event is supposed to be happening and whatever the symptoms are supposed to be happening. I would put that onto myself. It's like, well, I'm manifesting this. And when we realize that we're manifesting these feelings, you end up moving, or at least myself, I needed to move myself into a state of separation. So hear it, acknowledge it, yes, but being mindful of the effects are my own and not something that's being manifested or generated.
Yes, well, and you brought up a good point, right? We will manifest those symptoms or those experiences. And again, they're usually projected by other people. And then we will create that because we are expecting it. Or, for me, in my early days, I had to recognize that I wanted to be a part of the group. I wanted to be a part of the spiritual movement. So in order for me to feel like I fit in, I followed along with all that stuff. And again, that created so much limitation and barrier in me, in my own growth and my own understanding. But at the same time, I also learned a lot from those experiences, not just in how I was actually creating that, but it allowed me to form a good basis and a good understanding of what my spirituality means to me. And through that, stepping away from those barriers, those limitations that were imposed, it brought forth such a peace and such an understanding and allowed me to step into my power. And that's what a lot of what happens when people get caught up in the labels is they're giving their power away to these things that are supposed to happen or the way it's supposed to be, and aren't allowing themselves that opportunity to check in with themselves. What does this mean to me? What is my understanding of it? What is my interpretation of these situations or things that are appearing in my life?
Yeah, I can expect it. So what's the solution?
What's the solution? For me, it was to recognize how much I was giving my power away, and to start to look inwards, start to ask my questions to myself, and coming from that place in my heart, learning to listen to that inner compass that is here, learning to step into that vibration of love and understanding, and taking ownership. But it wasn't just taking ownership of what I was creating, but it was also taking ownership of my behaviors and my actions, and learning to love and accept all those things, and forging my own path and my own understanding, but also learning to not impose my beliefs onto other people, because what I believe and what is right for me is not necessarily the same for everybody else.
And I'm really curious if anyone else has noticed that they have been affected by these events even before they've happened, like all the different equinoxes and all the different feelings. And typically, I know a lot of the women in our areas, they end up they're typically very sensitive and they're very aware to this already. To me, I as in my masculine form, and I'm just looking at the women around me, I would think, well, I don't know. Okay, well, I don't know what you're talking about, but sure, you're feeling that way. But as I became more aware of my energy and surroundings, I started feeling and seeing more. And you bring up a really good point about, what we're projecting onto each other. Because if the people in our group, especially in our closest group, are feeling a certain way and they're saying certain things, that it gets projected onto us and we start feeling that. And I know that's definitely happened with myself. I've also caught myself off guard where I didn't realize, like, why am I feeling this way? And then I realized, oh, there's this event going on, and it happened even before. So I think that, and that's where I wonder, well, am I just using that as an excuse? Am I feeling this way because of, it's ascension symptoms? There's a really big coronal mass ejection this week. We're feeling a lot of waves. My body is shutting down on me and it's doing all these things. Well, I'm feeling this way, but okay, well, is it because now I see it's an ascension, but I'm reading that afterwards. So, that was ascension. But even knowing it afterwards, I felt a little bit calmer. It's like, I actually feel better about myself, this ascension. But I still don't know whether that's in my head or not, or whether I'm feeling.
To me, I'll even take that whole terminology of ascension. That alone, to me, was a trap. Because, again, it made me feel like I'm part of a special group. Only so many people are ever experiencing this. And it gave me that air of superiority. And like I was better than everyone else, which in turn became a trap, because then I was coming from ego. I wasn't coming from that place of peace and love and compassion within me. So I was projecting, there's something very special about me, therefore I understand or see things much different and much better than everyone else. And again, as we know, when the ego starts to take over and we're coming from that place, we step out of love, we step out of compassion. Yeah. And we actually, it's almost like we pull ourselves back out of that. But again, that information that is attributed to ascension and ascension symptoms, a lot of those things can and will happen. But how many of those symptoms do you experience just because you read it? And if you don't experience those things, do you feel like, hey, I'm not achieving something, I'm not on this path because this isn't my experience?
Yeah. Hey, I've kind of recognized, even just this last week, there's been a lot of traumatic events that have come up, not only with my clients and people come around me, but in my community and also just in my own personal life, that I've noticed that, there's miscommunication that happens in a conversation. And I'm noticing my ego might come up, that I want to defend it or argue it. And there's my ego that wants to say it. But as I look into it further, I say, that's a great trigger. I'm now being triggered by this, and I feel my ego being lifted up here. So for me now, it's become this great opportunity that, I can see, it's like, oh, okay, thank you. This has become now, I can feel this pattern. It's making me feel in a certain way. It's creating a pattern within my body. I'm getting my back up in a certain way. I'm getting angry in a certain way. And my ego is trying to defend it. Okay, well, now there's a pattern. I need to look at it. And through meditation and observation, I'm able to look at it without my body and mind getting in the way. And that, I find, is going past these labels that we're putting on each other. So when every time I see one of these events come up, I really want to tune in beyond the event and recognize, is this my body? Is it my mind? Is it my higher consciousness? Am I feeling the correct things that I'm supposed to be feeling or not supposed to be feeling? Like, and I find quiet in the mind is a necessity during that. So how did you know that this was this was a label, that you're being affected in the most profound? Like, what was the big moment in your life when you noticed this?
We talk like about around ascension and stuff like that.
No, just the labels in itself. I know you gave a little bit about this, but was there a specific event?
Well, for me, it's through my years of training and experience. I had always idolized the instructors that were teaching me. I always wanted to be like them. And in doing so, I wasn't actually listening and honoring myself. And when I started to realize, yes, I was having some pretty profound experiences in my life, but I was having just as much or more struggles and limitations and challenges in my life. And as I started to recognize those challenges, I started to recognize that I had placed all these labels on everything. And because a label is defining something, and once we define something, it becomes a rigid structure. And in order for me, especially professionally, to be able to step in to my true power and what I'm truly capable of providing, not only for myself, but for my clients, I had to just drop the labels, because those labels, again, created that rule structure and that limitation and how I could perceive and approach doing sessions and my ability to help people on those deeper levels. So once I dropped the labels, and again, this is around the work, I've been trained in over 60 different modalities. So that's a lot of rules and a lot of structures that were limiting my capacity to be of service for people. Yeah. But the moment I just dropped the labels, because when I first met you, Con, I was doing massage therapy and a technique known as body talk. And I was very stuck in that box of, I can only do body talk, because if it doesn't fit in this box, I'll ignore it. Yeah. But as I was doing my work, I would be getting all this intuitive information coming through me. But because I couldn't fit it into the box of body talk, I would ignore it, push it aside. So I was not trusting my intuition. I wasn't trusting myself to be able to step into that place. But the moment I let go of the labels, I didn't need to be a body talk practitioner. I didn't need to be an Acuneck practitioner. I didn't need to be a Reiki practitioner, any of that. I just needed to show up as me. And when I showed up as me, that's where the real power came through. And that's where my clients actually started to get some really profound changes, because I stepped away from the labels and the limitations that were imposed onto it because of them.
You know, it's funny that you bring this up, because this was one of the personal moments that I had this week myself, where I was speaking to somebody who happens to teach Akashic records. And lately, my guide's been saying, you got to be really careful about the Akashic records. You got to be really careful about who is opening that door, who's coming into that space, because you can also let certain entities come in. And it coincided with me doing an emotional release with somebody. I was guiding somebody through their release, and they had these demons attached to them, this evil that they were finding that was from not theirs. They just attached onto her as a host. So as I was sharing this with this other Akashic record person and talking about the dark side, for them, they thought I was attacking their business. And they say, well, you're attacking my business. It's going to be, and I'm trying to do all these things for you. And really, I was saying, like, I never asked you to do anything for me. And in fact, I'm not allowed for you to do anything for me, because that's my journey. I need to learn how to heal myself. But so through this, I saw that this was a trigger. This was also my ego talking up. But the bigger picture was, on their side, they saw it as an attack. But as my guides are saying, if you can let go of you being attacked, of that label, seeing someone's attacking your structure that you're in, and if she actually let go and opened herself up, it would have elevated her as a practitioner in the Akashic records and would have made her even a better teacher. But and this was the lesson afterwards. Now, that wasn't for me to say, but this is just what I noticed through my own emotion, because I was still being triggered by it, by her saying certain things to me that got me up, that really affected me. And then I noticed, okay, I have a pattern of betrayal. So that helped me with my release. And I'm hoping in understanding that, releasing that, I become a better practitioner. And I really hope the same thing happens for them, because I haven't spoken to them since. And if they've gone through something similar, that they've observed these emotions that are going through them, to say, maybe there is something to this. I'm being triggered right now. You're affecting me. You're attacking my business. Oh, okay. Well, is this my ego? Is this my body? Okay, let me look past this. So when we find that we're being triggered, and I think these labels on everything that comes in, the construct of who we think we are, who we think our life is, who our business is, who we've become so far, that maybe there's somewhere further to go. Just because we've done all this work in the past doesn't mean that we don't have further to go. And I think that's just part of the entire evolutionary process, that it's never that I've done all this emotional release work, I've done all this shadow work, I've done all this spiritual growth. We're never at our limit. This is just another lesson, another day in the classroom for us to learn something new. So we just continually have to grow and let us know that we really just are in a human body. We're here to learn something. We're here for spiritual growth. And we're going to be challenged, not just now, not just in these last 3 years. Now we're done. We never have to do anything more, that we're spiritually awakened. This is a lifetime of being challenged and triggered and for continued spiritual growth. And that's where true enlightenment is.
Yeah, I've always loved the quote that healing is a journey, not an endpoint. And we're going to continually face a lot of the same challenges and triggers throughout our life. And even though we may think we've dealt with a trauma that's been stored in the body, oh, I've already dealt with that, I moved on from it, I've let it go. But then 5-10 years later, it pops its head up again. Yeah. And to me, in my understanding, this is happening because you are in a different place of awareness. You're in a different state of understanding. So you can actually look at this old trauma that's resurfaced with different eyes and see a different side of it, a different aspect of it that you were unable or blind to before. So when we see these old traumas resurfacing time and time again, it's not because you didn't do the job. It's actually a time to celebrate that, hey, look how far I've come. Look at the work I've done has gotten me to this place where I can now see this in a different way and unfold and decharge another aspect of that trauma. And it's never gone. But our ability and the way it affects us changes, and we become stronger through that. And it's a beautiful experience to watch unfold as people are going through these things. But again, I've seen it so many times, especially with my clients, that they feel like they've taken a step back because this thing is resurfaced. And as soon as it's reframed and I actually celebrate alongside of them as I'm helping them process the next layer, then it makes it so much easier for them to move through the resurfacing of that trauma and actually begin to find that love and that grace that comes through as they are processing this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I do feel, especially the people in our community that are spiritually awakening, having these profound moments, and then they'll go do like an ayahuasca ceremony or do something different, and where usually it's been this really expansive experience where they're just so excited and so amazing, everything's just so wonderful, but then they have this really low moment that puts them spirals down really far into a low vibrational place. And this is where I can even just in this last week, I can think of two where people were added or people were affected by these traumas, and one family, they're just stuck. This guy who had this ayahuasca ceremony, he saw these attachments, he saw these dark entities, and now he is just isolated himself, and he doesn't have the mentorship or someone around him to help with this. The other part is someone else that they're spiritual awakening who does have a mentor around them that's saying, I'm feeling really low. My world is just crashing in on me. And then as we bring in our intuition and connecting, it's like, wow, I'm really excited for you. That's really good because now you got your next challenge just showed up for you. This is your next test. Like, this is it. It's coming. Like, great. Once you get past this, you're going to even be more spiritually awakened. You're going to be even better. So there's that excitement in there. And this is why oftentimes you'll see us, when someone is going through a really painful, heart-wrenching moment, that we've got this sloppy grin on our face. And it's like some people will think like you're so insensitive. What's wrong with you? That you're watching somebody go through pain, we just know like this is really good because now you're finally facing the emotions that you haven't dealt with before. Right? I find that's really key. I noticed Doc is coming to the stage. You definitely want to welcome Doc here. Hey, brother. Hi. Doc.
Hi, Doc. So sorry. It's been terrific jam getting to this place, but please carry on. I won't interrupt your flow.
Well, I'm going to add on to what you just said there, Con, because when I do teach some of the classes I do teach, that's a big lesson that I have to get across to people is when people are going through an emotional release, especially majority of the women, their initial reaction is they just want to hold the person, say, oh, it's okay, you'll be all right. And they want to coddle them. But in the process, if they do that, it actually stops that emotional release in that moment. So a lot of the approach that I'm trying to instill on them is your job is to hold space, to let them move through that emotion, no matter how uncomfortable or how difficult it is, and to celebrate and to cheer them on and to encourage them to keep leaning into the discomfort. Because as you lean into the discomfort, it dissolves and it loses that charge. And also back to what you were talking about, the ayahuasca, and people who get kind of stuck in those types of experiences, that is a huge spiritual trap that people can get stuck in. Yes, those experiences can be quite profound, but if we don't take the time after, and it doesn't have to be an ayahuasca experience, it can be a huge revelation that happens through deep meditation or breathing techniques. But if we don't take the time to integrate that information that we've unlocked through that process and learn how to change our behaviors and our actions, it's going to be an uncomfortable ride. And people get stuck. And I've heard the term like bliss bunnies and stuff like that, where people just keep going back again and again and again because they want that happy, uplifting, euphoric experience without realizing that you can actually achieve that without any of those experiences when you allow yourself to integrate and bring those changes and that information you received through those experiences into your everyday life.
Now, you're saying integrate those. What do you mean? Can you expand on integration? Because that's come up recently. People end up being a little bit confused about what you truly mean by when people say integrate. Can you share your experience and definition of that, please?
So for me, integration is taking the lessons and learnings and understandings we get through any type of experience, whether it's energy healing work, through meditation, through ayahuasca or psychedelic type experiences or breath work, and understanding what it was that you the epiphanies that came through, the understandings and the learnings that came through, and then learning to recognize in my life, where am I not bringing those learnings and those lessons forward to change my behaviors? Where am I not recognizing the patterns that were really brought to my awareness through those experiences and implementing the necessary changes so I don't continue on those old destructive or chaotic behaviors and patterns? And how can I rewrite the story and learn to bring those lessons I received through those experiences to change my experience in my everyday life?
Okay. Now, you were saying something really interesting earlier about when someone's going through that release of trauma, the emotions, that that in your group, someone would coddle someone else, they would embrace them and say, "It's okay, don't worry, it's okay," which typically been the mother role that people would have. I'm curious, and as I think back of when I do guided emotional releases, the majority of the time it's through video, but there's times when people are in my home and I give them an emotional release and I have them sit in a chair opposite me or in a comfy chair, and I'm on one side and they're in their side, and there is no touching. I've never really thought about touching, but I am holding space for them. It's curious. I'm interested about the coddling side. I kind of actually want to put this to Doc because he's the father here. You have kids, and when your kids have gone through emotional trauma and you've embraced them, how, when you see that they're going through a big lesson and there's an emotional release or there's some sort of lesson here, what's your process? Do you hold them? Do you coddle them? Do you say it's okay? Or do you hold them and coddle them without saying it's okay, but you're just there holding them and giving a safety in your arms? I'm curious about the difference in your experience.
Okay. So obviously it's dependent on the situation and the child or adult as they are now. And frankly, in our own evolution as parents, in similar fashion to our own evolution as souls in our own journey, we shift that awareness and that understanding of what works depending on the time and wherever we are. So in the very beginning, if there was a disaster or something untoward happened, as parents, your natural instinct is to go and help them out and sort of jump straight in and say, okay, do this. But over time, it's shifted to a more, a less didactic approach, to a more engaging approach. So basically, we'll sit and do a bit of reflection. So we'll say to them, well, so what have you learnt and how do you feel? And then we start to break it down, and then gradually the solution evolves in their own minds rather than us telling them. Because believe you me, and any parent who's watching this will know, the minute you tell a child something, particularly if they're a teenager and beyond, they quite often disregard what you say. So it's just a matter of life of being a parent. But what I found works is very much then after they have gone through that sort of understanding, we do like a follow-up, and look back and say, okay, now looking back, what is it that you've learned and how would you have done it better? So it's an iterative, engaging developmental approach rather than a top-down, you must do this sort of approach. Now, it shifted with time for both of us and also with the child, but now it's a lot more easier. And what's really been very profound for us is that quite often some of the children will actually say to us, well, I've got this emotion, can you help me shift it? Or I'm anxious about something, can you help me deal with it? And we both go into particular guided meditations that allow us to do that. And so they are very much open to engaging with this way of thinking rather than a parental or psychotherapeutic or whatever approach. It's a very different approach, but I have to say it organically evolves, and the I told you so scenario never works, generally speaking. It's more of a okay, this is what happened when I was doing this and when I had hit a milestone, and this is how I dealt with it. What do you think would work for you? And then it puts it into their court, so they create their own solution, and at the same time it actually gives them the tools in the long run to be able to handle that same problem or help their siblings, which is something that we've seen a lot of lately, where there's been a particular matter of concern, and all three of the other siblings, because we have 4 children, have clustered around the brother or sister in question and supported them. And it's been really, really, really nice. I mean, it's just remarkable how it's happening. So, for example, my son was trying out dating websites. He got his sisters to look at his profile, right? Which is pretty cute. But it's nothing that we would ever even know what to do with people and tell him to. But it's that sort of engagement where it's a natural, organic. I've got the word that's in my mind, is flowering of their abilities to handle change, and that's all we've done. But I guess whether they can draw any parallels with that with spiritual matters, I don't know. It's up to you to consider. But it just works for us in that way.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Can I expand on that? So, for me, when I am doing treatments, I won't reach out and hold them. But if they ask for it, that's a different situation. Okay. They're asking for that comfort, for that holding. That's a very different situation. But if they just start to cry or have a deep emotional release, and my initial reaction is, oh, don't worry, you'll be okay. Well, that's not allowing, and that's not honoring their emotional processing. But if in that moment they're going through that emotion, because maybe it's wounds from when they were a baby and they weren't loved and they weren't coddled, and that's the stuff that's coming up. Well, of course, in that moment, that's what they need, is to feel loved, to feel held, but they need to ask for it, and rather than me imposing.
Sometimes, though, you have to feel the situation, feel the energy around you. So during lockdown, when my wife has a farmer's market stall, and for a variety of reasons, I did the stall when she wasn't there. And I kid you not, on about 3 occasions, middle-aged and above men came up to me and told me about some very profound issues that were crossing their mind. I mean, one of them just said to me, I just feel so lonely. I don't know what's going on, And so I just pulled up a chair, said, come and sit down, let's have a chat. And equally so, there was another chap whose wife had passed over, I think, maybe 6 months before this particular market. And this guy's a big policeman selling honey. And then suddenly he's just starting tearing up, and he had to turn away and face the wall. So all I did was I just put my hand on his shoulder. I said, look, I'm here. If you just want to have some time, I'll keep an eye on your stall. Just take your time. And just create the space where they don't feel that pressure to do whatever they were doing beforehand. And then at the end of it, after he felt better, I just said, look, I'm here. This is my number. Call me. And that's what I did. But it's just serendipitous the way these events happen, where the person who you're meant to connect with comes in front of you by the universal laws of whatever it is, and it just works. But I guess as men, we're not too familiar with doing the hugging sort of stuff. It doesn't quite work, and you can probably get arrested for it, but that's another matter.
Well, I think that's the bigger issue, because I grew up in that huggy, squishy type of family. My mom was squishing the heck out of me all the time, but my father was very militant, and he wasn't a touchy-feely person. So for us, it was that divide in the home. But I found there was that little bit of a separation that would happen when, I would extend out love to other people when I was younger, but it was faced with like, what are you doing? Like, and even though my intentions were honest, even to the point where I'd see a woman waiting for the bus, and she's in a pouring downpour of rain, and I would say, hey, do you want to a ride? With being perfectly innocent, pick them up and drop them off, everything's good. But later on in years, as I became more of an adult and more of this came up, it's like, sorry, like I would love to give you this offer, but I don't even want to offer it anymore. But I'm really going off topic now.
So Doc, we've really talked already about spiritual traps and what they mean to us. Is there anything you would like to share about how you would define your experience around this concept of spiritual traps?
In my ignorance, because it is very much an area I'm sort of slowly working my way in, I guess there are potentially 2 or 3 different forms of spiritual trap. One is that which pertains to me. Another one is that which pertains to me and another individual. And then the third thing is that which pertains to me and a community or a collective. I didn't know about it, but I've seen in other quotes spiritually aware people where something like spiritual egotism comes in, and they've got this "well, I'm right" sort of situation, and everybody else has to listen to me. And it's partly based on, I guess, something to do with their ego, who knows, and also the way other people respond to them. Now, I hope I never get into that situation, and I can give you guys and anybody else permission to kick me somewhere hard, to give me a nudge. But each of us is on this journey in our own way, and what happened for me isn't necessarily, or even likely to be the way for anybody else. But I think what I've sort of found myself consciously doing is listening to the word, this is how I did it, rather than this is how you should do it, sort of thing. Okay, and that hopefully keeps me in check to a certain degree, and that's one thing I've noticed. I don't know whether that resonates with you guys.
Yeah, very much. And I've experienced much what you said, the spiritual egotism in my own life and my own experience. Through the work I do, I've had way too many people put me up on a pedestal. Therefore, because they put me up there, now I have to stand in this image and become that image and present myself from this image. But it was actually quite recently that I really realized, as much as everyone else has put me on that pedestal, I let them. And I kept myself up there. So in reality, I was the one holding myself back, even though I was getting all this praise and stuff from everyone else. And having that realization and letting it really ripple through me, I got very mad at myself. I got very upset at the people who brought it out in me, but the upset came from a place of love, because thank you for finally allowing myself to take ownership of that and to shift that out of my experience, because I got sick and tired of everyone putting me up on that pedestal that I voluntarily stepped on.
Yeah. Khan, how about you?
Absolutely. I mean, I resonate with both sides of that fence, one being put up on a pedestal and another one being torn down by somebody. Whereas somebody said, well, so-and-so said, don't go see you. You're really negative. You're really wrong. There's something wrong. There's evil about you, which for me is like completely shocked. Like, I am like, oh, okay. I didn't see where that would come from. But my response was, I'm not mad at that person for trashing me or bringing me down. They're just exactly where they need to be in their spiritual journey. And it's never for us to say they're the right person or the wrong person. So I'd say, I don't know what they're thinking or where they are, but you need to take it what someone says for a grain of salt. As much as I felt that, that those are little moments that, as much as I've helped a lot of people as I think I helped myself, my ego might have gone up, but it gets like torn down, as Mike was saying. You like those moments, like, oh, okay, that's great. It's a test of your humility to see how you experience it.
I know that. I mean, I've had a couple of particular, but they're not really clients; they're just family friends, really, in fact, members of the family for whom I've channeled and done some work for. And I always start in saying, look, first of all, you have to take what you intuitively resonate with, and you can't accept everything I say as gospel, because I get things wrong. And second, and at the very end, I usually say, and I've said it to my dad, for example, that you don't need anybody to do this for you. You can do it yourself. The answers are within. You don't need me. You can do it. And I usually point them to the direction of people like William and so on, to say, if you want to learn how to do this, go to speak to so-and-so, and see if you want to do it. Yeah. So that's a very useful thing. And it's interesting, we've all had a similar sort of insight, shall we say. The second, go on.
Sorry, go ahead, Doc.
Well,
I'm gonna bring us change the subject, so go ahead.
Yeah, the second thing, I guess, is when, as you say, other people see you in that particular light, and it jars for me personally whenever people sort of put me up on a pedestal, because I don't feel that way. And far better guides, for example, you guys out there than me. But more importantly, I always have to check them and say, but the thing that I found very interesting is how I see other communities. Now, to cut a long story short, within my current life and my current religion and current culture, there are certain tropes that make us feel, as a community, have certain perspectives on certain cultures and religions. Now, we shouldn't, because it's very clearly written in our scriptures and understood that this is not the case, that we should see everyone as us and as one. But historically, Sikhs and Muslims have a bit of a beef going back up 400 or 500 years. So within our community, there is this thing about seeing Muslims, first of all, as our brothers, because we all come from the same geographical area, speak the same language, eat the same food, but there's this religious divide. And so equally so in other cultures, or could be religion, could be down to food preferences, that people will say, oh, ours is better than them, sort of thing. And this is what I meant by community level difference, where we see ourselves as a group as being different to others. And within that is an indirect inference that you're, quotes, better, but there is no such thing as better. And so I think spiritually, amongst the, shall I say, the awakened psychic group as a whole, there is potentially, just potentially, an opportunity for us to see ourselves as being different, if not slightly ahead of the game in terms of our awakening. But as you all know, and the listeners will know, we are just the same as everybody else. We're just at different parts in our journey, and it's their unique journey as it is ours. So those are the sorts of traps which I've had to consider. And just lately, I've seen it with channeling a certain ascended master, which Khan is aware of, where within my family, people have been saying, why on earth are you doing that? It's got nothing to do with us. But if we are clear channels, we've got to put aside all of those preconceptions and just accept the being as being an enlightened being as they are. And again, this has been part of my development, where initially I would have this particular hang-up, but now it's gone. It's entirely gone. And equally, we may have hang-ups about certain galactic beings, like reptilians. And I was shocked. I think I've told you guys before. I was shocked to find out I've been a reptilian, a sixth dimensional reptilian. Mm-hmm. So much so that when I was in the function about 2 months ago, I saw not all, but a lot of my past lives coming back to me. And I could see the faces, and one of them was this reptilian, and I wasn't scared. And it was actually a really cute-looking reptilian. But those hang-ups that we've had, including about reptilians and Orions, and the pointy-headed chappie with the big forked tail, all that sort of stuff, it goes because you just see them as being light. And I guess we all have those hang-ups depending on which part of our journey we're going on. And it's the ability to put those aside and not seeing them for what we think they are, but for what they truly are, as in beings of light going through a journey. So
you bring up some really good labels, and one is religion. And religion has been around for a long time. A lot of people that are in their spiritual awakening, discovering themselves, and they realize the paradigm that they've been constructed into their entire lifetime, saying we need to be in fear, we need to do these things, you're going to go to hell, or this is going to happen. We get pigeonholed into this. And then when we start having these spiritual awakenings, we start questioning ourselves. Am I crazy? Am I feeling right? And when you try to share it with somebody within the community, you get struck down. Or in the rare case, I've heard somebody being embraced, but that's maybe like 1 in a million that someone's actually embraced, that they have a question. But as soon as you start questioning something outside of the rules that have been set in place, you are a rule breaker and you're cast out. And I know Rachel has experiences you can share with us. This also goes within our lessons in spiritual awakening. So we look at things like Dr. Joe Dispenza. Joe Dispenza, in his teachings of things like the pineal gland, breathing exercises, and just understanding how the mindset works, it's very analytical. There's a lot of science based around it. And this is really helping people with that transition. As you spend time in there, you realize there's more of a spiritual side that allows you to move there. But some people are very locked in that spiritual side that they can't really go beyond there. So to me, that feels like a trap, that you're just not allowing yourself to go into the unlimited possibilities.
Yeah.
And finally, you're also saying the reptilian aspect. So you saw the reptilian in you. So even just someone hearing there's the possibility of reptilian, that is like, well, truthfully, we don't know. But ultimately, this is the visions, the thoughts, the things that we have in our mind, and it's up to us to observe it and allow it to interpret it, regardless if it's true or not, because we don't know. We feel it's true, we know it's true, but that could just be the interpretation that we need to see and understand for us to get through whatever we're getting through, to have our own spiritual awakening or understanding things.
Yeah, but we are programmed, if you like, to see the separation in virtually everything, be it football teams, be it geographical localities in a town that you live in, be it one school versus another. I've heard it even said about how you cook a particular type of rice in West Africa. There's a type of Nigerian rice called jollof rice. Never had it, but the Nigerians think they make the best jollof rice. But you go across the border to Ghana and there's another whole dynamic. So no, we make the best jollof rice. Yeah. So we just programmed to see these differences and say, oh no, we're better than them. And it's just part of the whole, if you like, the framework within which we are in at this point in time. And all things being equal, it's going to shift, but it is shifting, in terms of how we see this.
And it seems like the continued message in getting out of these traps, even potential traps, is to keep your mind open to all possibilities and to move yourself into a state of allowing and surrender and really going with the flow.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
and go on.
To me, this life is nothing but unlimited potential. And as soon as we try to define something, we've limited our experience. So as we step away from that perceived limitation that we've imposed on it ourselves, that's where we start to see the beauty and the truth of it all. And you both have mentioned the reptilians. To me, and my understanding is that I am one with everything. That means I have been everything that has ever existed, and I've been everything that has yet to exist, all at the same time. It's just a matter of which one of those vibrations do I want to bring through the channel that you see here that we call Mike into this experience. But I've been all of that, and I have the capability to be anything I choose to. Doesn't mean it's easy to get to those places, but as I bring in that awareness that it is possible, then I can allow myself to go through the transitions, gain the understandings that I need to in order to step into those experiences.
It's definitely been the experience that I've been having in a lot of my meditations for some time now, is moving really outside of this body and out of the personality and moving into the space around me and connecting with absolutely everything, connecting with the walls, the electricity, the table that's in front of me. I've been just connecting into all that energy in those meditations, and then bringing it in to the body. So there's a process within our meditation as we expand our awareness and continue to surrender and let go, that we can then integrate ourselves into everything around us to connect to that oneness. Now, previously, there's been small, fleeting moments in meditation where you end up connecting with everybody, you move into extreme bliss and oneness. Well, there's the aspect of connecting into that oneness without the bliss and unity, that you are just one. There's no emotions in here. And that really is what I understand, that I've connected when I connected to that reptilian energy, is that it is more of that connectedness without the emotion. And this really goes into the experience of everything and moving into that unity, being able to experience one, letting go of surrendering emotions. And that's part of being human, that we have a collection of all the emotions and feelings that we could possibly have. And we need to be able to sort them out or feel quite comfortable with all of them. because most of the time we avoid. Some people avoid fear, anger, shame. Others actually avoid love. They don't want love because they've been taught that way. So now we're moving into a vibration of feeling, but being able to not avoid the emotions, but be able to feel them. So now you're in a state of surrendering. So you never actually will get trapped in a particular label, that you end up moving into that oneness without emotion.
Yeah.
It's the basis of Chinese medicine, as I was taught it, is that the source of disease and stress in your life comes from this perceived separation from the Tao. And again, for those who don't know, the Tao is just the way the universe unfolds. And the Chinese medicine has this theory that the moment we name a child is the moment they become separate from God, because we've now defined it. Because when we're born as an undefined, pure being of light and love. But the moment you label it, you've now created that box and that limitation, which then creates the experience that we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's been, I find, the biggest joy in this, learning that we're not the body, we're not the mind, and we're not the personality, that we're something beyond that, and moving into that unity. And this is where I find what we're experiencing in the Enlightened Mastery community meditations, that we spend time in that group meditation. So whether it's group prayer, group meditation, group activities, but you're spending time in that oneness with away from the body and the mind, and you share in that energetic space, it's quite profound as you expand there. So I clearly see, and I notice that with my own body, as I tune into the MS in my body, I clearly feel a divide. Literally, the left side of my body is weakened, and the right side is the strong side. And there's a spot in the divide that's there that I'm beginning to move closer and closer and closer. And now it's moving into the myelin and the polarity within the myelin. There's actually an offset of polarity, which is a divide, a separation. So I've created the separation. So I've created this with myself. I've created the separation. I've lived it. I've become it, to the point that the cells of my body, that the myelin in itself has feeling the separation. So it's really repelling the myelin away from the nerves, repelling the myelin away from itself. So there's a polarity here, right? So now it's like going in and spending time with the myelin, looking at the polarity and at least reconnecting it. But it's taken some time to actually get into the root of this and find out what the core of that is, because we don't know that we don't understand that we are in a state of separation. We have no idea that we're in a state of separation until something happens, that we start questioning something that allows us to observe it. Now, our teachers and masters always said, like, no, you don't do that. This is how it is. Well, you don't get the opportunity to do that. Say, oh, okay, I won't do that. You get scolded, which has been our conditioning. But as you let go of that, surrender it and explore it and spend time with it, you can actually see a truth and an understanding of it all.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to ask the both of you, I mean, you've seen far more clients than I ever will. And the question is this, that I'm not saying this is a trap, but it's an area of concern where we're trying to explain some pretty radical, if not complicated or complex ideas to sometimes people who don't have that insight or that awareness as to what this means. How do you check yourself to say, have they got it? Or do you start off using baby steps, for want of a better word, in terms of explaining things, or do you just, how do you handle it?
For me, it always goes back to the breath. Anytime that you are in a state of confusion, anger, guilt, whatever it might be, anytime that you are feeling off, begin to take a breath and release. This is natural somatic function of the body as it releases. So the body does this naturally. So let's take control, taking control of our body. We need a point of taking a big breath, holding your breath until the body becomes slightly uncomfortable, and then release. And now we're regaining control of the body and mind, and then stay. What I've really found is I might be caught up. I have been caught up in these repeating patterns. Well, typically, if I have an emotion, I'm able to release it very quickly. What I need to do is not only take that breath, but I needed to actually spend time in silent meditation. So I'll just sit there in silence and I'll breathe and I just focus on my breath for a good 10, 15, 20 minutes sometimes, and even longer. But I'll spend that. And then once I notice actually certain states of consciousness changing within me, I start seeing visuals. So my clairvoyance starts kicking in. I start hearing things. I start hearing ringing in my ears. My clairaudience kicks in. Then I start feeling things. My clairsentience feels in. And then there's a nothingness and silence and stillness. And I feel the stillness. I'm in that. Now I've gone beyond the body and mind, and I'm in the quantum. I'm in that state of energy that is just very still. So regardless, for me, I would say for anybody, regardless of what state you're in, this is where the importance of meditation comes in. And that starts with the breath, taking a breath, closing your mind, closing your science, getting yourself in a comfortable space, and just breathe and feel and be present with your breath. And in that calmness, you'll end up getting clarity. And for me, that is the beginning to everything that I've experienced. And maybe there's some others, but at least that's what comes to mind to me. The easiest way is your breath. How about you, Mike?
For me, in my experience, especially, I'll relate this to my clients' experience. For a lot of people, a lot of my clients aren't on this spiritual journey, at least not at the beginning when they first start to see me. A lot of them are in a very big state of overwhelm and stress. Their body's starting to manifest different symptoms, and that's usually what brings them in to see me. My first treatment that I work with people, I always keep it very general, just a way to introduce my vibration into that experience. But because my vibration is vibrating at a much higher frequency than most people have ever experienced, that alone just brings such a peace and a clarity to them. Like at the moment their mind quiets down and it's not running circles and questioning everything, it's an unfamiliar experience for them. But then they realize, hey, this is possible. This experience is something that I can have. But then they start to praise me. And then I have to say, no, this is you. I've just created an opportunity for you to step into this experience. And then as I work with them more and more, my role is to then teach them how to feel into their body, how to listen to their body, how to connect and start to move this sensation, this feeling, this emotion, whatever it may be, in and through and out of their body. So, most people come in a pretty overwhelmed state, but after a few sessions, then I'm empowering them. Because my ultimate goal is to not have to work with somebody forever. My goal is to get them to a place where they are empowered and they can start to take control of their life, their health, and their stress, and then use me as tune-ups when needed.
So what is that for you then, Mike? If that first step then is just being in your presence and having a conversation with them? So I find that that's the same, but how about someone when they're on their own? What would they do by themselves if they didn't have you?
If they didn't have me?
If they didn't have a mic in their life.
Well, then it's hard to say. Most people will just
buy the mic doll.
most people will just suffer. Most people will just go through life and not knowing that there's anything different. But for the most part, when people are at their wit's end, they will reach out. They'll jump on YouTube. They'll find talks like this. They'll find books or anything else that helps them to try to make sense of what it is that's going on in their life. But there are thousands upon thousands of very skilled practitioners out there that can help bring people to these places. But a lot of times, people end up in my space because they've tried everything else, and this was kind of like the last straw.
I find people coming to me for a reading or just like an hour session, or just sit down and just to have a conversation and talk. But if I was going to say if someone's going to be by themselves or really encourage people to get in the practice of meditating, taking a breath, spending time in silence. And it really is good to have a mentor and guide, to have a mic or buy the Mike Borg plush toy that would be coming out to Divine Soul Awakening
So
by Christmas. Get your Mike toy by Christmas.
So here's a conundrum then. Khan, you'll know with martial art masters and sensei, and equally with yoga masters, that they will develop a coterie of students, and they'll hold on to them for a long time, especially when they want to maintain their subs and their approach to developing their school or their ryu. Have you seen this with the spiritually awakened, where they want to develop their little coterie of followers, and then they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's partly a marketing thing as well, I guess. Have you seen that?
Very much so. I'm very fortunate with my martial art teachers. They are of the old school, and my teacher, at least with Tai Chi, I've never been part of a belt system. It was brought into Ontario, but it really means nothing because the belt is only used to hold up your pants. And that's something with North American to say you have a belt, because that's creating ego, because it doesn't matter who you are, you can be beaten by anybody, really. So the whole belt system was an issue. But my own teacher says, don't believe what I'm saying, try it, test it, do it, see it for yourself. Don't take the only reason why my teacher is where they are because they questioned everything. And I find this with the spiritual teachers a lot. And that's what I'm trying to be very mindful of any of the communities I'm creating. And I'm also creating roundtables of people that are going to check me. And if we're going to be doing something, that there's a group of people that are just community members, that they will put it at check, because I don't want to be put on that label, because I am human. I'm very much a human person, and I do have ego. And I love my ego because it keeps me protected and warned from certain things. Mm-hmm. But it also means that my ego can get a little bit too big for itself, and I can start acting from that place of ego. So I do want to be checked. Mike was saying this earlier. It's such a blessing when somebody calls you out, and when you appreciate it and you like it. It's like, oh yeah, that's great. Thank you for calling me out. Because now as much as that triggers me, it's an opportunity for me to look deeper within myself. And I noticed that within a lot of larger communities, a lot of them, and I saw this, I won't say the name, but one is a very well-known healer, that their body was complete debilitating, and now they're in the hospital, and they came out of this, and they're teaching these courses, and they've been doing it for years, and they've just launched their latest course. So they start out with a webinar. Come on to this webinar, and they just talk for about an hour. And essentially they're saying, the doors are closing soon. You got to sign up. If you don't do this, you're never going to heal. My way is the only way. And then one question I love to bring up is price. What if you can't do it? Well, you know what? I've heard if you can't afford it, you really can't afford it. You just don't need to know where the money is. And then they start saying, this is probably going to be the last time I do this, because anytime I do this type of work, it drains my energy. And that's what I knew that they were faking it.
Yep.
Okay.
Because anytime you do this work, your energy is so heightened and alive that you are just high throughout the time that you just can't get enough energy. It's like, oh yeah, you're messing with us now. You're scamming us. Okay, yep. You're out. By simply asking certain questions, and I do that for a lot of people. I'll just ask them certain questions because I'm curious to see what the reaction is, and if I can see they let go or provide a certain answer, I'll understand it, because that's definitely something that I'll do. I'll do compassionate pricing, but it also means I'm not going to turn somebody away if they're in need. But I'll tune into their energy. And sometimes I'll turn people away because they're just taking and taking and taking, and they just want. And you can feel it, you can sense it, especially as we become more aware and sensitive. But others, they're there for the monetary. And let's face it, we need the monetary to survive in this world. But we can't define our entire lives just because you've moved into a mansion that you need to support yourself and pay the bills because you put it in there. And the only solution is you. And if they don't do it, this will be the last time and nothing's ever going to happen again. So anyways, call them out and test them. And that really is important of who do you decide to spend your energy around? Because now we're moving into law of resonance.
Being drained by doing this work is just a belief system. And it's a belief system I used to own. So I used to only be able to do 2, maybe 3 sessions a day before I would be depleted. But that's because I had teachers and instructors who told me, don't take on people's energies. You can take on their energies, you can take on their emotions, and I believed it. And also, when I used to come from ego, instead of tapping into this unlimited potential of energy that exists all around us, I was actually using the energy that was inside my body, because I actually used to tell people, and I probably actually said this to you, Con, get on the table, I'm going to heal you. So the moment I said that, I put myself into ego, and I was basing the results off of me and my expectations of me being able to provide this experience. But as soon as I started to realize that, and I shifted that belief that, you know what, I am going to be energized and fulfilled through this experience. And I don't believe I will ever take on anyone's energy, emotion, or experience through the work I do. And then, like you said, Con, I'm so full of energy, full of life. I'm buzzing. Sometimes my energy is so strong after treatment that my wife gets pushed back. The energy wave is so strong, like she stumbles from time to time. So we change our beliefs around it. We change our experience.
I love that. I love it. I actually noticed this last week. So I've been doing channeling for some time, or just spending time in this energy work and helping people and releasing and being very high vibe. Then last night, or 2 nights ago, I got on the Zoom call with my uncle to help him fix his computer. 2.5 hours later of click this button, do this, walk over here. I was so drained after that 2-hour call that it was depleting. I hadn't experienced that in so long, that where I know, like, when we do the spiritual work, when your vibrations are raised, so you're just energized, excited, feel good, it's healing. And that is the energy I'd much rather spend time in than anything that depletes my energy. So it was noticeable.
Just lately I've been, it's a long story, but I've just listened to a few podcasts, and one in particular was very interesting, where he was dissecting out when a particular religion becomes a cult. And in particular, he was talking about evangelical Baptist churches in the US. But what was very interesting to see, how I could see resonances of this in some Buddhist practice, some yogic teachers who are very well thought of, and there's one in particular, and a whole bunch of other people, including in our religion. And it's very interesting to see how this, for want of a better word, spiritual trap, and the ego becomes more and more dominant, that these individuals take on godlike mantles, should we say, that people follow. And I'm sure it'll never happen with any of us, but the main thing is that this is probably in extremis of how the whole thing can be manipulated into a business, into a corporate, into a mega church, into a whatever, that has so many facets that just sucks people in who are vulnerable. And I think, as you say, the opportunity that we have and others to have is that perhaps we can see through some of this and ask the awkward questions to say, well, is this really true? Why is this better than that? And who says so?
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's the question. Who actually who's it decided that you were, in fact, I don't know, God's representative on earth? And it's just usually a self.
I've experienced it with some of my apprentices that I've taken through different training with. And again, they always looked up to me. But the moment they finish the training, I have to sit down and I have to remind them time and time again, I'm not your guru. I'm not your mentor. We are equals. We've been equals from the moment we started this training. I just have an opportunity to share some of my wisdom and some of my experience to potentially help you see things in a different way. And it takes a little bit for some of them to kind of come and meet me on the same level. You are a friend, you are a colleague. I'm not above you because I have more experience. I just have more experience, and I have an opportunity to share that with you so you can learn. And then as you learn and grow, guess what happens for me? I learn and grow because you're bringing different awarenesses, different understandings, and different interpretations of the information I've just shared with you. And to me, that's the beauty of it.
That's the biggest lesson I've learned, is that we're all equal. There's not one person is on a pedestal greater than us, unless it's an all-knowing intelligence. That whole collective ocean of us, that might be the only greater being that there is. But even when I think about Jesus, Jesus even said himself, like, we're all equal. We're the same. There's no difference between us. We're all on the same level, each and every one of us. So that, to me, that's very profound. And by learning this, each and every single one of us becomes a teacher and a student. We all have something to learn. We all have something to teach. No matter how old you are, how much money you have, where you live, what your religion, what your culture is, all of us are equal, and we're all teachers and students for each other.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess it's really time for us to start wrapping this up. So, Con, is there anything, last things that you would like to add into this discussion?
It would only be to summarize that when you think about every single spiritual or every single moment in your life, we don't know if it's a trap or not. Oftentimes we get pigeonholed into a trap. In order to avoid any potential trap, it is to surrender, let go, let it all go, allow whatever to happen. And when you need to, take a breath, calm your body, calm your mind, and allow yourself to get into that still state and go beyond the body and mind. Tune into yourself. And we're all here. Surrender yourself into the process, into the energy. Allow it to flow and happen. That would be my final say of this. Yeah.
Yourself, Doc, is there anything you would like to?
No. I think going within and going with the flow is actually key, because you just sometimes have to realize you don't want to put on these boots. Just get rid of the boots and just be yourself, because I certainly have seen that in my professional life, where it's very easy for you as a clinician to be put on a pedestal. But right at the very end, when I got into palliative medicine and hospice care, you realize you're not strutting around in a white coat. You're just walking alongside all the patients at their journey. And the same thing equally applies, I guess, to spiritual traps, where we should increasingly develop this awareness, which we have, of not putting on those particular mantles, because they're not ours. It's our journey. It's part of the same with everybody else.
Yeah. So for myself, I would just like to end sort of my portion of the talk here by just reminding people, if you find yourself going back to the same thing over and over again, but you aren't noticing change in your life, one of the big things and one of the biggest traps I've witnessed in myself and within a lot of people is this attachment to chakras, and this idea that I'm experiencing this because my chakra is blocked, or it's not open, or any of this stuff. But how many of you people have actually gone and had someone balance your chakras and seen a dramatic change in your life? I'm going to guess probably little to few. To me, something like chakras, yes, the information we've attached to the concept of chakras is very relevant and very important for us to understand on our spiritual journey, because it does lead us to that openness and that awareness. But if we start blaming every little struggle and challenge in our life on a blocked chakra, we've actually created the trap. And we need to step free from that and look deeper into understanding, why do I have this belief? And what is the trauma that's happened in my life that has manifested as this experience I call a blocked chakra, to get those deeper awarenesses. So again, that chakras are just one sort of concept, but trust yourself. Ask yourself those deep questions. As Con says, take some deep breaths, breathe into the heart, ask those questions, and become aware of the knowledge and wisdom that does present itself to help you move beyond the limitations we've imposed by these defined structures.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much, chaps. It's been a great conversation. I'd like to mention to the audience that we've got our next session on the 18th of October, where we talk about the divine awakening, the spiritual awakening of the divine masculine. I'll be joined by Stu Murray, an educator, author, and passionate advocate for the collective transformation and personal responsibility. Stu will talk to us about masculinity and men's work in healing, rites of passage, plus much more to help with the evolution of the divine masculine. I think it's very apt that there's been the three of us here talking about this outro. And we're going to call it a close today and look forward to seeing you all hopefully next time on the 18th of October. And with that, I wish you good night, good afternoon, and good morning wherever you are. Cheerio.